Hello, everyone. Today we're talking to Rachel Dacus from the Rad Tech Department at Jefferson College, our CTL podcast for today. She has been doing a student led study group for years. Very interesting and very successful. So she's going to share her tips for starting something maybe in your department. Rachel, thank you so much for coming. Let
Yeah,
us
thank
know
you for inviting
what you're
me.
doing it and how you're doing it.
Yeah, thank you. So, what I noticed when I first started being full time is that as a faculty, we're allowed our 10 office hours, and my office hours were just getting booked up like crazy. And I was actually spilling over those. And it was the students asking the same types of questions, and I felt like I was a broken record. We would have our classes, and we would do the lecture, and we would do the worksheets, and we would go to lab. And when we would finish, we would have very little time for questions, and the students all seemed to have the same amount of questions. But we have these barriers as faculty, as full time faculty. And our barriers are one, first and foremost, our time is a big barrier. Two, we have limited resources other than what we've done in class for them. We feel like we've disseminated all the information we possibly can, and yet they still want more. So, resources is number two. The third is our office hours, and mine were bursting at the seams, and it was a lot of repetitive things that were coming in. And then lastly, the one that we can't really forget about is our own mental resources. Toward the end of the day, we're checked out. We've given everything we can possibly give, and the students need more. So those are the biggest barriers that I was considering. And the students get overloaded in class because they have their lectures and then they have their worksheets or their outlines they're filling out. Their brains are bursting, but they're not really interacting with us a whole lot. Every now and then you get a couple of students and they want to contribute and they want to help out. And then you have the ones that just sit there the entire time. And then at 11 o'clock at night, you're getting an email with all the thousands of questions that they have. So, what I've looked at is science student backed research on how to help students learn when resources are limited. Again, those limitations are time and mental resources, actual resources, and office hours. Students need to spend more time retrieving information than they do pushing. They say, I read the book 3 times. That doesn't help. So once they read it the first time, at that point until the test, they need to be pulling that information out. So, what I looked at was how to form a study group that I could be very minimally involved with, but the students could take over and lead themselves. So, what that looked like for us is I would say, we're going to use the outline that's posted in my class. I'm going to get you guys started, and I'm going to turn this over to you guys, and it's going to be student led. And so, what I did was I gave them examples of things they could do. So, I have a packet that I give a new cohort, and it has different ways of studying. One of those ways is by doing mind mapping or doing flowcharts. Students like those because they can do drop downs on ideas. That way they can short and sweet rewrite things without rewriting paragraphs. And then I also teach them how to brain dump. So we set a topic and then I set a timer and then they write down everything they can think of. Start with terminology and just let the paper flow. And then when the timer runs out, they turn to their neighbor and they compare. What's on your brain dumping sheet? Oh, I didn't put that. And then someone else will say, well, what's on your brain dumping sheet? Oh, okay. And all of a sudden they're talking. And when you talk, you retain. When you participate, active participation, you're actually going to be able to retain that. So they're doing that on their own with the prompts that I give them. Another thing that we do is Google Sites because students live in counties all over the place. And so they can't always be in the same room. But if you set up a Google site for them, they can all participate with this and they can add tabs, they can add their thoughts, and they can still work together without being in the same room. And then another thing that we do is we call it exam concepts. So whenever I have my tests, I'm very routine. Every test is kind of lined out the same. And so we have a concepts and we make a column for terminology. We make a column for pathology because I teach radiology. We do a column called projections. And so what they do is they sort through the information from the lecture, from the book, and they place everything in categories. That way they can look at it short and sweet. And when they want to go back and study later, they say, I've got 6 minutes on this timer. I'm going to study pathology. And they look at that short, sweet list. And so it's not jumbling concepts. And then another thing that I like to do is I I like to push them towards AI. And I know that that's kind of one of those topics that people,
Hot.
it's a hot topic, but there are some really great ways to use it. So we like in our program to use Notebook LM. We like that because they can take a filled out outline from my class, they can scan it into there, and it makes podcasts, it makes quizzes, it makes flashcards, it makes mock tests, and they can sit and use the information that I gave them that is correct, and they can have this resource made for them.
So that's the key with AI.
Mhm.
When you are the content expert and you use AI and you know it's right, the students may not know it's right, but it's your lecture notes
It's my lecture
made
notes,
into all those.
my outline, my worksheets, and they can scan it into this, and they can all the way home listen to a podcast that sounds like a murder mystery from my pathology lecture that I did. And it makes it sound like a story. And there's typically 2 or 3 voices in there, kind of like we're talking now. And it reads through the outline and it says, "But do you know what's so exciting about this? We have this pathology that originates from here." And it sounds like a mystery. Like it sounds like the podcast you would want to listen to in the car instead of just a monotone voice. And then they can do quizzes from it.
How long have you been using that app? What's the name of it again?
It's called Notebook LM, like
LM. Okay.
the letters LM.
Okay.
I've been using that now for almost 2 years.
And what difference has that made?
It has made a huge difference. My students love it. And so that is one thing that they can do. Now, in my class, to make lectures more engaging, I do have editable outlines that they can edit in either Google Docs or they can edit it in GoodNotes, which is another app. And what that allows them to do is to take notes and be participating while I'm lecturing instead of being idle and just staring at me. And I know that they use those too for their study groups. So the study groups that I have, I set them all off when they first begin, very first day of a new cohort. And I show them how to do it. And I tell them what material they're going to go to with that study group. And then I show up typically for about 5 minutes. I say hi to everybody, and then they go off on their own and they're drawing all over the whiteboard. And I started out with groups of maybe 8 to 12. And now I've got upwards of 30 in study groups. Some of the study groups, they feel better with a smaller group. And so they intentionally set a study group with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of people that they really bond with. But on a whole, they're working together now. And I've been able to remove myself from this situation, which I love because that helps my mental resources. It helps my time and it helps preserve repetition in my office hours, which I have found tremendously helpful.
That is just amazing. That is amazing. I had a question about, are they assigned to these study groups? How do you assign people in the groups?
So because we have a cohort-based program, I automatically take the first years and I put them in their first study groups together. And we do this on first day with a scavenger hunt. So I break the ice trying to figure out, I send them all over the campus and I try to figure out who has similarities, who has this in common, who's from Perry County, who's from Jefferson County. And I form these conversations and it helps them form a natural group. And then we have the first semester or so, everybody's together and then they start to break themselves off. So after they kind of get a feeling for who's where and, ooh, we could ride together. I can quiz you while you drive.
With their students.
They're building relationships.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was really surprised at with me going from straight lecture to half lecture, half study work groups in face-to-face classes. And I thought, oh, how are they going to handle this? Because sometimes group work, somebody doesn't do this and that. But the reviews, my student reviews were like, they loved that the most because they got to talk to people. I think the pendulum is swinging back from the online courses with COVID to students wanting more face-to-face classes, and they're really enjoying being made to talk to each other regularly. So it's not a study group per se, but it's just like the discussion groups, if you will.
Yes.
And they get participation points for the questions I give them and the answers that they give at the end of the class. So,
and if I tell you something, if I give you a fact and you're listening to me, that's one thing. But if you can turn around and explain it to someone who doesn't understand, then that is showing growth in yourself,
Right.
because not only can you listen to me say, anybody can listen to me, but can you turn around and teach it to someone else? Can you restate it to someone else? And I feel like that is very valuable in their learning. Our
Right.
test scores have gone up, our retention rates have gone up. We are able to help our students succeed more. And in the radiology program, our test scores in most of our classes are 86%. And that's a B. That's not
That's
always easy
huge.
to get,
Right.
especially because we do a unit a week. So, that being said, these study groups is helping to raise their testing scores. It's raising their confidence. They're able to speak. They're able to ask questions, get ideas out, because that's not happening in the class. I don't know of anybody that I've talked to on class that has said that their classes just bubble over with excitement and they're just talking all the time. I feel like most of us go in and we feel like we're talking to a class where they just look at us
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
and they take notes. But in these study groups, this is where they're blooming like flowers and they're adding, contributing, brain dumping. What do you have? Well, what did you put? Oh,
Right.
I don't think I understand that theory.
Right.
Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And so they're all talking. And so the more they participate, the more they get out of it.
Right. How long do they last and how often do they meet?
Once a week. Most of them meet once a week.
Okay.
And typically, gosh, we've had groups that have stayed in there for 2 or 3 hours. Most of them do about an hour.
Okay. So you have cohorts. So that's a
Mhm.
little bit different than other classes that may not have
Correct.
cohorts.
Correct.
Can you give any advice for other faculty that don't meet
Absolutely.
that way?
Absolutely. So, what I would suggest is put together a packet of ideas for study groups. So, I would say put in the packet different examples of study groups, brain dumping, using the AI, using flowcharts, giving examples of like the exam concepts. How do we go in and figure out what are they testing me on?
Mm-hmm.
What are we asking on these tests? So, if we can give them some examples of columns, they can fill it out. So, by doing that, that removes us from them going, okay, so how do we do this? What do we
Mm-hmm.
do? Well,
Mm-hmm.
let me give you this packet, take it to your group and find a way that you guys like. See
Right.
what you subscribe to.
Right.
So, I like that. And then sometimes it's easier to go into the first one or say, hey, you know what? When you have your study group, let me know. If it's during my office hours, I'll pop over and get you started, make sure you guys are on the right track.
Right. Well, and two, I mean, like I said before, those of us that don't have cohorts, if you can
Hmm.
just do this in class with them
Hmm.
and use the time and then walk around in the groups and
Hmm.
and hear what they're saying and ask questions with them. I
Absolutely.
mean, it may not be quote studying, but they're
Sure.
getting real world applications to apply what they've learned so
Absolutely.
far.
And if you can give them 20 minutes in a class, that actually is quite a bit of time.
It is quite a bit of time,
So,
and they
yeah,
don't want to hear us lecture for a whole
they
hour. I mean,
don't.
once we get through
They
the
don't.
material and we do a flipped classroom where we have them do assignments before they get there,
Mhm.
it helps us really to hit the ground running to kind of focus on what's the most
And
important
they
part.
know what's expected because it's in our syllabi.
Yeah, and reviews. I mean, I give reviews for every
Right.
exam. There's reviews there that they're able to study before they take the exam if they just study with a review. I mean, it's
Right.
straightforward.
Right.
Rachel, what kind of advice would you give a new faculty and an older faculty to encourage an older faculty that might be set in their ways or hasn't done it before or is afraid to do it? What advice would you give either or?
So, for either or, I would say make that packet, hand it out, and say for 10 minutes,
Here's
I'm
the
going to set a
tools.
timer. Here's your tools. Let's figure out what works for you guys. I'm going to walk around. You can ask questions, but I want to see what you guys do with this. And I would suggest that for a new faculty or an older faculty. The AI was a very hard thing for me when I first
To
started
use
it.
it, to accept it, to believe
Both,
it? What? Okay.
both.
How did you get over that hump? Because a lot of people are at that hump.
So for me personally, I speak around the United States and I'm writing presentations and I also grade essays for a couple of different state organizations. We kind of do it for each other. And I had to learn how to check things on AI. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn to look for similar patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I had to look for all of the classic signs. And after just making myself do it, I got more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I agree with you,
And
100%.
I tell the students, I love AI to get a starting place because students look at a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen and they don't know where to start.
That's right.
Get your idea and then let it go from there.
Mm-hmm.
You
Play with it.
AI is a great place to get a starting point.
It is. It helps you. Yeah, you're right. Get off of that blank stare, that brain fog, whatever you want to call it. We're like,
Yes.
okay, I don't know where to start.
Give me a usable statement,
Yeah.
and I can build it from there.
So give them the tools and encourage them to meet, because if they don't have set times to meet, and I like your example of being off campus, or if they
Mhm.
can't physically be there, they can set up some
Right.
ways to do that, whether that's Google Meet or
FaceTime,
yeah,
whatever
right.
tools they're using now.
So Rachel, you've talked about this before at one of our CTL sessions, and it's in the archives for any of those that want to go and look at it. But I wanted to create a podcast also. You also have social media, and you
We
probably
do.
have pictures with all
We
this.
do.
And you showed me some pictures of before and after, and where you started with the study groups, and now it's just a packed room of students. So
It is.
if you want to encourage anybody to go to your social media and take a look at what you're doing there, you've got
Yeah.
a lot of different good ideas, and we'd
We
love
do.
to have you back to
Thank
talk
you.
about more.
Thank
So
you.
we appreciate what you do. I'm impressed with what you do, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll continue to do that. So
Thank you. Absolutely.
thank you for coming today.
All
We'll
right.
see you
Thanks, Cindy.
next time at the CTL podcast.